Greetings from my second home here in Asuncion, Paraguay. I'm in my temporary apartment. Probably going to get a real apartment in a few months here. I have been married twice. Most of you know this, some of you may not. My first marriage was many years ago as a young, stupid beta male who did literally everything wrong, like most men do in relationships. And my second current marriage is as an alpha male 2.0, where I've done just about everything right. No one's perfect, but just about everything right. And I am now coming up on my 4th wedding anniversary, or marriage anniversary, however you want to consider it, with my wife, Pink Firefly. As of December of 2021, we will be living together for 4 years straight. Together for about 7, living together for about 4, and our marriage is still very good, very strong, very happy, very unlike anything else I've certainly experienced as a beta male under the traditional monogamous models. And in this video today, I thought it might be fun to analyze what I'm doing differently in this current cohabiting relationship with a woman versus what I did in my first cohabiting relationship with a woman. It will be very interesting, and at the end of this video, I will show you the best technique on how to manage a relationship when you live with a woman full-time in a romantic context. I am, of course, Caleb Jones. This is Alpha Male 2.0. I make a multi-6-figure location-independent income while dating multiple attractive women, even though I'm married, kind of nice. And I teach men like you how to do the same thing. Now, before we get into the details, I know a number of you are going to say, I'm never going to move in with a woman, I'm never going to get married, I'm never going to live with someone. I have addressed that weird objection numerous times on past videos and past blog posts, and I've talked in great detail about how it's easy to say that when you're 26 or 31. Let's say that when you're 47, 54, 63, you're going to want to settle down with someone. No, you may not get legally married, and you shouldn't. That's good. But you will probably want to settle down in terms of a live-in relationship with a woman who you like. That's just statistically the odds, and the odds are very low that you will never do this. Matter of fact, you can watch a video right here where I talk about why you would want to move in with a woman. You can check that out if you want. And I'm not talking here about marriage or non-marriage. I'm strictly talking here about living with a woman full-time in a romantic context. As I've talked about many times, it doesn't really matter what paperwork you have signed or not signed. If you live with a woman full-time in a romantic context, you are living the lifestyle of a married man. You can say, but Caleb, I'm not married. We didn't sign anything. I don't care. You are living the lifestyle of a married guy. Whether or not you put your signature on a piece of paper or not is completely irrelevant to your day-to-day lifestyle. So I call this type of relationship a marriage. I am married. I live with my wife. I love my wife. She's wonderful. I like being married to my wife. I like living with my wife, and I am married. I can't give you the financial details of how I've structured this relationship for legal reasons, but I'm married. And if you're living with someone, you're quote unquote married. That's the term I use, even if you have not signed those specific items. So before I go on with the specifics, I just want to remind you that even if you are not living with a woman now, the odds are overwhelming, 90% plus, at some point in your life, you will when you're a little older. All right, with that out of the way, here are the top 5 things that I have done differently in my current marriage that is wonderful beyond belief versus my original marriage, which was kind of a slog and kind of a pain in the ass and kind of a big clusterfuck at the end. In other words, the typical monogamous marriage that doesn't work in the collapsing Western world today. So in terms of my first marriage, item number 1, top of the list, is I argued a lot. When I was married the first time as a typical monogamous beta male, I argued with my wife at the time, all the time. It was a normal and regular part of the marriage. And if you observe most married people who have been married longer than 3 years, you will find usually the same thing. You will find that in the typical live-in relationship between a man and a woman, married or not, doesn't matter, you'll find that them arguing on a regular basis is a core component of the marriage. It's just part of the relationship. That's why you see so many married people say, well, yeah, we argue. That's part of being married. Wrong. My current wife, Pink Firefly, and I argue rarely. It's rare. And when we do, it's very short and it's very unusual. We both feel weird because it's so strange for us, even after being together for almost 7 years and living together for almost 4. Now that's an important point. When you look at other married or cohabiting couples, you need to only look at couples that have been together longer than about 3 years. As I've examined many times at my blogs in the past, when you first move in with a woman, you go through a period called NRE, new relationship energy. And that is the fun, exciting time when the live-in aspect of the relationship is new and exciting and fun. And you're having sex left and right. And you're so excited to start this new life together. Then if you get married, that's fun. The bachelor party, that's fun. The honeymoon, that's fun. Having that first baby, another big boost of NRE. People fucking love it when the live-in relationship is new. You cannot analyze these people because these are temporary conditions. You have to only look at people who have been married or cohabiting longer than 3 years. And if you look at most cohabiting couples, the vast majority, in fact, who have been living together longer than 3 years, arguing is just part of the marriage. It's a regular component of the marriage, and I was in that category. My first marriage to my first wife was 9 years, and throughout that entire 9-year period, we argued regularly. It was a regular part of the marriage. Today, Pink Firefly almost never argue. Now, do we literally never argue? Of course not. That's a fantasy world that doesn't exist. But in terms of the number of times we argue in a given year, I could probably count on the number of fingers on one hand. The number of times we argue in an entire year, living together full time. But Caleb, haven't you been away from Pink Firefly a lot this year? That is true. That's accurate. So I'm talking about the relationship as a whole, 7 years together in some form or fashion, and 4 years living together. Yes, this year was a little unusual. But if anything, you could argue, and I would, that us being separated this year for a few weeks at a time throughout the year is difficult on the marriage. If anything, it should be hard on the marriage. Instead, we're doing very, very, very well. Matter of fact, a while back, about a year ago, and I think I mentioned this before, I asked Pink Firefly, I said, be super honest with me. I know you're happy with me, I understand that, but what is the level of happiness you have with me, with your relationship with me? Is it happy? Is it really happy? Is it crazy happy? Or is it orgasmic? Like you're coming every day. That's how good it is. And she looked at me and she said, well, is there a level between crazy, happy, and orgasmic? Is there a level between those? I said, sure. She goes, that. This is after many, many years, 3+ years of living with the same guy. I challenge you to go find a woman who will honestly say that about their relationship with their husband or live-in partner after 3 years, particularly if it's monogamous. Number 2, big difference between my 2 marriages is that in my first marriage, when we argued way too long. And again, this is typical and normal of marriages and live-in couples. When we argued in my first marriage, and we argued a lot, when we argued, we would argue for a long time. We would go and go and go and go, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. And if you've ever experienced this, and the vast majority of you have, haven't you, when you're arguing with a woman you're dating or living with, and you just get more and more angry, and she just gets more and more angry and more irrational, and you start correcting her with your stupid guy logic, and then she gets even more angry. And so when you're finally done, 47 minutes later of yelling at each other, you both walk away and nothing is resolved, except you're more angry at each other, right? You know how this works. I remember those days. You scream and yell at each other, and even if you're not screaming and yelling, even if your voice tone is normal, you're arguing and arguing and arguing, getting agitated and pissed off, and then you finally both surrender because you're exhausted. In some cases, some women can go forever, so it depends. And then you walk away from the discussion, and now you're just 10 times more furious, and she's 10 times more furious. It's not like you walk away going, you know what, we have a good resolution to this problem, and I'm glad we took care of that. Is that the case in the typical live-in relationship? No. As I talk about in great detail in my marriage manual at open-marriage.com, which you should check out, when we argue, my wife and I today, Pink Firefly and I today, when we argue, it's a few minutes and it's over. It's a few minutes and it's over. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, maybe 6. Rarely is it longer than about 5 minutes. Matter of fact, the last time we argued longer than 5 minutes was over 2 years ago. I remember it. And the reason I remember it is because it's so rare and weird for us. 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and that's it. We're done. Either we come to a resolution within that time, or if we can't come to a resolution, I gently end the conversation and I say, let's revisit this tonight or tomorrow when we're both in a better state of mind. Because I don't want to have a repeat of my first marriage where I'm the typical married guy or live-in guy and you're arguing and arguing and arguing and arguing and just you're getting more and more pissed off. By the way, not arguing and arguing for short periods of time requires effort. It requires proactivity. It requires self-awareness because your mental default is to sit there and respond to everything that comes out of her mouth. She's a woman. She's a girl As I've talked about many times, women are biologically wired to talk a lot. Women process the world by talking. So when she's agitated or disagrees with you, she's gonna talk a lot, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yes. And so what you're gonna do as a dumb man, alpha male 1.0 or beta male, doesn't matter, because I've seen them all make this error. You're gonna be hardwired to sit there and literally respond to every little statement that comes out of her mouth for the next 47 minutes. That's stupid, that is not productive, that damages the relationship, it damages the trust in the relationship, it makes you less happy. Why the hell are you married or living with a woman who you argue with on a regular basis? That's fucking dumb. Why would you do that? Before I go on to the next items, you should subscribe to this channel. You should click the dumb notification bell. You should put a like on this video, leave a comment on this video. You can say whatever you want, doesn't really matter. The more interactivity I get on this content, the more of this content I will provide for you for free. The third thing that I did incorrectly in my first marriage as opposed to my second marriage is that, and this was a big one, and talk about arguing for a long time, I tried to share the children. Now, I understand there's a lot of you who are saying, I'm never gonna have kids. I already addressed you guys at the beginning of this video. The odds are overwhelming you will, even if it's by accident. So you probably will when you get older. It's easy to say that when you're 27. Let's see what happens when you're 45. Statistically speaking, most of you guys are gonna end up having kids at some point. Most of you, the majority of you, including you red pill guys, alpha males, what have you. Just the way it is, just statistics. I had 2 children, as most of you know, in my first marriage. My son Josh, who today is almost 30, he's an alpha male 2.0, self-employed. I work with him in my company as well. And my daughter Alyssa, who is shortly gonna be doing something very big in my business, but I will announce that a little later. When I was married the first time, I made sure that raising of the children and every detail of raising those kids was 50-50. We shared it 50-50. So every time my wife at the time put something on their plates for dinner that I didn't like, I said, whoa, 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 why are they eating that? And we would have a huge fucking argument about what they'd eat for dinner. Or at the end of dinner, if they didn't eat all their food on their plate or what have you, I'd say, whoa, whoa, you're wasting all this. I would tell my wife, you're wasting all this food. Well, what's going on? Or if there was a Sunday where my son was sitting laying on the floor watching cartoons in the morning while my wife was out mowing the lawn because she didn't want to make my son do it because that was mean, we would argue about that. One of the biggest sources of problems and arguments and disagreements in my first marriage was because of the co-management of the children. Now, is it the kids' fault? No, nothing to do with the kids. It's not the kids' fault. It was my fault and it was her fault. As I talk about in my primary book, The Unchained Man at alphamalebook.com, if you want to have kids under an alpha male 2.0 model, you need to settle down with a woman who is comfortable with taking over 90% of the details of raising those kids. 90%. If you do 50-50, 2 things are going to occur. Number 1, you're gonna take time and emotional energy away from your mission, which is what makes you happy and what makes you attractive to your wife. I can't tell you the number of times, and you've probably seen this yourself, where a woman marries a strong alpha male, they have kids, the alpha turns into a beta because he loses all that testosterone from having kids, then the wife loses attraction for him and divorces his ass. So you are damaging that thing that had her move in with you in the first place if you become a 50-50 parent with your kids. Don't do that. And by the way, this is not some right-wing conservative 1950s bullshit. I have attacked right-wingers, Trump supporters, and traditional conservatives, Christians and so on, many, many times in my content. I disagree with the vast majority of the things those men say. I'm talking about logistical in terms of your long-term happiness. You can't share the kids. Now, you may say, but Caleb, in your current marriage, you don't have any kids with Pink Firefly, and you're not going to. Right. Hello. So the best way to do this, if you can pull it off, a lot of you can't, but the best way to settle down with a woman is to not have any kids. If you just don't have any kids with her, the number 1 or number 2 source of problems in the marriage, and marriage counselors and marriage experts will back me up on this, magically vanishes. It's never a problem. How many times have Pink Firefly argued about our children? Never. One of the main reasons we almost never argue, and when we do argue, it's just a few minutes, because we don't have any kids. Kind of nice. Now you may say, but Caleb, I really want kids. That's fine if you really want kids. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's an 8, 9, or 10, you really want kids. If that's the case for you, by the way, you need to watch this video right here on how much fucking money it costs to raise kids in the modern Western era. I hope you make a strong 6-figure income and or have a net worth of $1 million or more if you want to raise kids in the West. And if you don't understand what you're doing. But that's a topic for another time. I'm just saying you will have a lower drama, happier marriage if you don't have any children. And the stats are very clear on this. I've quoted them at my blogs. They track the happiness levels of married couples. When they get married, the happiness goes up. As soon as they have kids, their average happiness drops. And it stays low for 20, 25 years until what? The kids move out of the house, then their happiness goes back up again. And I've seen that anecdotally in my own life with long-term married couples I know. Just how it works. No, it doesn't sound very conservative. No, it doesn't sound very traditional. I'm sure your more traditional-minded guys won't like that, but facts are facts, I'm sorry. If you're gonna have kids, she is 90% and you're 10%. If she does things raising those kids you completely fucking disagree with, outcome independence. You take a few deep breaths and you get back to work. Let her raise those kids. That is not where you want to be for the numerous reasons I just described to you. Number 4 biggest difference between my former marriage and my current marriage, and this one is pretty fucking obvious, but it's pretty significant, so I have to include it on this list, is in my first marriage, I was monogamous, therefore she ran my entire sex life. When you promise monogamy to a woman, men don't understand this when they fall in love and get one-itis and get all excited. When you promise monogamy to one woman, she controls your entire sex life because you can only have sex with her. What happens when she says no? Are you gonna try to convince her? Good luck on that. Once you've been married longer than 3 years. The first few months, you're gonna be just fine. The first year, you might be okay. Getting into that second, third, fourth, fifth year, good fucking luck. And if you don't believe me, go ask a monogamous live-in guy who's been married or living with his girlfriend longer than 3 years and ask them how often they fuck.
Never!
And make sure he's telling the truth. A lot of people lie about this. Get a few beers in him and then ask him. Our second biggest source of arguments and conflict in my first marriage after the kids was sex. I wanted to have sex and she said no. Or when we had sex, she did what I call wife sex. And if you've been married longer than 3 years, you're gonna relate exactly to what I'm about to say. If you've never lived with a woman more than 3 years, you're gonna be very confused at what I'm about to say, but this is the scenario. Wife sex is when you try to have sex with your live-in wife, and she goes, all right. And she flops on the bed and flips her legs open. She says, all right, let's get this over with. And she checks her watch. And while you're having sex, she's just staring at the ceiling, waiting for you to finish. So that was a regular occurrence in my marriage. And when my marriage was finally over, I made a pact with myself that I would never, ever, 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 ever allow one woman to have that level of control over my sex life. There's no way you can be long-term happy as a man if one woman has complete and total control over when you have sex. There's no way you can make that work unless you are a very, very, very low testosterone man, which is a problem, and you plan on remaining that way for the rest of your life. How many times do you think Pink Firefly and I have argued about me wanting to have sex with her and her saying no? Never. That's literally never happened. Why has it never happened? Well, number one, she rarely says no. Has she ever said no? Yes, she's a woman. That happens sometimes when you live with somebody. But it's unusual when she says no. It does happen, but it's very, very, very rare. It is night and day as compared to my first marriage. Also, on the rare time she says no, instead of me going, God damn it, come on, what the fuck do you know? Like a typical monogamous fucking pussy, I just say, okay. I leave the room, I pull out my phone, and I schedule an FB for the next day. Very simple. She does not control my sex life because that won't work long term. Very simple. Number 5, the 5th biggest difference between my first marriage and my current wonderful marriage with Pink Firefly is that in my first marriage, I legally combined all of my finances with her. I get a headache even just saying that. Even though, this is like, my divorce was 15 years ago, so I don't even think about this stuff, but I remember these thoughts like, oh my God, what? So when we got married, we did what everyone who gets married or moves in with a woman does. We got a bunch of checking accounts and put both of our names on it. We got some cell phone accounts, put both of our names on those. We got some insurance plans, put both of our names on those. Whenever we got a house or a lease or what have we, put both our names on those. I did not get a prenup. I certainly didn't get an enforceable prenup, which means that legally speaking, she owned 50% of my assets, even if she didn't earn them, no matter what else happened. Stupid. The third biggest source of arguments we had in that marriage was over money. Why is that? It's the same reason we argued over kids. Just like we 50-50 shared the kids, we 50-50 shared the money. Now that gets really interesting when you make a lot more money than the woman you're living with, which statistically is probably going to be the case, especially if you do this post age 30. So I made a lot more money than she did. Most of the time she made no money. She was a housewife and I made all the money. Yet I would go out and make all this money and bring it home and she would have 50% say in everything we did with that money. Not good. We had argument after argument after argument after argument after argument after argument about how to manage the money in the household because it wasn't separate. Toward the end of my marriage, when I started to alpha male up a little bit, I actually went in and separated the finances. I gave her her own checking accounts. I had my own checking accounts that she had no access to. And then once a month, I would deposit a hunk of money in her checking account. And I said, you can do whatever you want with that money. There's no discussion and no argument needed. Now, did she like doing that? No, she fucking hated it. And that was one of the catalysts for the divorce. But to be honest and to be fair, once I made that change, all the disagreements about money, just about all of them, vanished. Today, I have an OLTR marriage with Pink Firefly. So not only does that mean it is sexually open, I can have sex with other women and I do it on a weekly basis, it also means our finances are 100% separated by what I call a financial barrier, again, open-marriage.com, a financial barrier of legal, logistical, financial, and international aspects that block my money and her money. She has her own money. Do I give her money sometimes? Of course, she's my wife and I love her. That's fine. And again, statistically, I make a lot more money than she does, so that's not a big deal to me. But in terms of if we got divorced, if she moved out, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I would lose about $150 in legal fees and that's it. I wouldn't be forced to give her any other money. I could if I wanted to, I could choose to, which is the way this is supposed to work with your money. But my finances are completely protected in case of a divorce, and we don't argue about money because she has her own money and I have my own money. So I spend my money the way I want to spend it, she spends her money the way she wants to spend it, and I can't argue with her about how she spends her money because it's her money. Last week, her and I were in Guadalajara, Mexico for about 2 weeks. And while we were there, she spent a significant amount of money on some fancy coats. Fancy coats they have at some of the fancy foofy girl stores they have there at Andares, Guadalajara. And I didn't say anything, but I thought, Jesus Christ, okay. I didn't argue with her because it's her money. Very simple. How many times have Pink Firefly argued about money? I think we have. I think it's happened, twice. Twice in 4 years? There you go. Because everything is separate. So what is the final best way to manage a live-in relationship with a woman? It is the last two things I just said, items 4 and 5. You make sure you are non-monogamous within ground rules. You can agree to ground rules of how you hook up with FBs or when you do it and things like that. You can be flexible about how you do it, but you don't promise eternal monogamy to the woman you live with. That's fucking insane if you want long-term happiness. Number one. Number two, you keep your finances separate. That means they're separate at all times during the marriage, and you have signed enforceable, let me say that again, enforceable prenuptial paperwork that protects you in case of a divorce. In the Western world, most prenuptial agreements or similar are not enforceable. They're not worth the paper they're printed on. So often, if you want to get legally married or move in with a woman with a cohabitation agreement, you may have to move to a different city or, God forbid, a different country where they're enforceable. If it's not enforceable, don't sign it, you moron. Keep your money. Matter of fact, if you want to watch a video that's kind of funny on the things women say when you pitch a prenup, you can watch this video right here, which is one of my most popular videos, strangely enough, on what women say when you pitch a prenup. But those are the differences between my two marriages. I hope this has helped, and I will see you in the next video. Have fun. Bye.